title, but really I want to talk to you about where I see blockchains going and some of the challenges we're going to be facing in terms of our broader mission. And I'm coming from a non-Ethereum position. Okay, so most of you guys actually know kind of invested in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm kind of more from a Bitcoin and a proof of work background. I mean, I started off as a chemical engineer in the previous life. I worked for 10 years designing reactors in the oil and gas industry. And then I fell down the crypto rabbit hole in 2014, ended up working at Coinbase. I was employee number 100 roughly in 2016. I worked on what was called GDAX at the time. It's Coinbase, it's a trading platform, all the back-end trading algorithms. And then got completely burnt out during the 2017 bull run and left Coinbase and took up the position of head of engineering at Tari, and I've been there since 2018, and we're building a privacy-focused layer 1 and layer 2 digital assets platform. So what am I doing here? What is the mission? All right. To be honest, it's not about Lambos for me. I really don't care. Rug pulls and exit scams. Who's been at Neocon? I'm getting a very big feeling. There's a definite vibe that people are sick of the rug pulls, and it's like fatiguing, right? There's this fatigue around just God. You live in such a scam-filled industry, and it's really tiring. To be honest, I'm not even about Bitcoin versus Ethereum or like one token beating another. To me, the mission is simple. I want to live in a world where we've separated money and state. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because ultimately, what is money, right? Money you can think of as a way of storing your excess labor and then applying it for business services at a later time. There's another way of saying this is it's storing energy in a sense. So money is a kind of a condensed form of energy, and I've got many writings and hours of talks on this exact topic. So talk to me if you're interested in this, and I can share many of my perspectives. Money is a form of speech, right? Because money lets you express yourself. And building on that, it's an expression of your sovereignty. I mean, you must know, like, in the Middle East, places like Afghanistan and that, the way they control and suppress women is by limiting their access to money. And the state is really the entity that controls how we deal and earn and spend money. And they're doing so more and more using surveillance technology. And of course, the state has always had a monopoly on violence, and they're using these two tools to suppress these two. And this is why I want to separate these two things. And I want it to be like 50, 100 years from now, where the idea of this statement is as ridiculous as the idea that separating the church and the state was. It seems ridiculous now that the church and state were ever combined, but I mean, 200 years ago, people would say, yeah, that's the way it is, man. So what is the forefront of this battle? To me, and maybe I'm suffering from a severe lack of imagination, right? But to me, the key technology here is decentralization. You take away that central control, you achieve the separation of money and state. Because if you can't control it, then it's free. But decentralization is not the same thing as success. So I think it's really important to realize that decentralization is a non-negotiable, it's completely necessary, but it's not sufficient for achieving our mission. So what are the things that I think are like critical in achieving success here? So you would have seen these two words often, and they often juxtaposed against each other, right? We've got decentralization on the one hand, and then we've got scalability and performance on the other. The good old blockchain China. To be honest, I think this is a real thing. This is a real problem. Like this is a real challenge. And any single project that tells you that they've solved this or they've cracked this, I think are lying. Or if you dig under the hood, they're not actually giving you all three of these things. I think we actually kind of need some sort of sleight of hand in order to get around what is a real constraint. And then I think what's really important and something to many projects are neglecting this, is privacy. So the privacy is super important, and I'll be touching on that a bit more. And then, of course, they're not quite as important, they're not quite as central to these other three things, but really, like, developer experience and user experience are kind of key as well. So how's Ethereum scoring on this? And this is coming somewhat from an outsider's perspective looking in. And generally, I think Ethereum's doing okay as a chain. It's doing well in some things and not so well in others. So developer experience. I played with Ethereum back in 2016, and it was a complete nightmare. Like I had a Geth node running, and it was syncing. It couldn't keep up with the chain, and missed. Trying to use smart contract development was incredibly painful. So I kind of ditched Ethereum, and then came back a few years later in 2020, and suddenly this entire ecosystem of developer tools, like amazing things like SDKs, developer environments. I would say Ethereum is probably the envy of the other blockchains in terms of developer experience. Although they are catching up. Yeah, for sure. The user experience is great too. It's about as good as Web 2, really, in some cases. And in some cases, it's way better. And I'll tell you a story. I live in Lisbon. I'm looking to buy a house out in Cascais, and we're going to get some money for a deposit. So I tried an experiment. I went to a bank and applied for a loan. And I went to DeFi and got into a lending platform. So the bank wanted bank statements, IDs, passports, blood samples, my firstborn son. Ultimately they wanted 200% collateralization. I would promise them the house and another property that I own before they even give me the time of day. And it's 2 months down the line, and I still haven't got a final approval. Went to Compound Finance, locked up some Ethereum. From the time I went into the platform, connected my wallet to the time the euros were in my bank account in Portugal, 3 hours on a Sunday. That is 10x user experience. I mean, this is amazing. All right, this is really like, why? It's a 10x better experience. Why can't we have trillions of dollars on DeFi right now?
One quick, if the collateral is on chain.
Yes. Fair enough. But I'll answer the question of why isn't there more? I think I'll answer that question in a second. In terms of performance, I think for a lot of commerce type things, remittances, buying things, the 12-second blocks is great. Even for exchanges, unless you're doing high-frequency trading, the user experience, you can wait 12 seconds for that. Where we're missing is microtransactions in gaming, right? 12 seconds is definitely not good enough. I see the annotation has moved. So microtransactions in gaming, I don't think anyone's nailed this yet in the crypto space, though. So can't really blame here. Scalability. Okay, I don't know how controversial the statement is in this audience, but layer 1's don't scale. Period. And the thought experiment I always give my team is if you really want to kind of scale, ownership, self-sovereignty of assets, imagine where we have to be is in a place where the World of Warcraft, every single item on that could be running on a blockchain, and a layer 1, a little breaking level. Even now, on Ethereum, we're really at the tip of the iceberg. We're just super early. There's hardly anyone really, in the grand scheme of things, using, Ethereum, and it's already congested. A couple of years ago, when cryptokitties took off, it would bring the whole thing to a halt anytime there was something interesting happening. So how do we solve scaling? What are some of the solutions here? And these are some of the strategies that I've identified and that I found interesting. The first one is sharding. Okay, so Casper, Ethereum has been looking at sharding for some time, and the idea here, because where is it? You not every node in the entire network has to be aware of everything that's going on. Okay, the story I like to use is like, if you've got $1 million of log bars, you go and put it in a bank vault. You get bank grade, military grade security to secure your gold. Makes sense. But if you go to the gym and you need to put your phone in your wallet, and you keep that safe for 45 minutes, you don't need the bank vault. You're not going to pay for a bank vault to lock up your phone while you go and work out. The same way on chain, if you've got a little, mom and pop store and you want to have a loyalty program or something, you don't need servers in Russia like validating getting consensus on your little, your little DeFi, your little NFT project that you're running. You need to get the security that you pay for. So I think sharding is a strategy that supports that idea and this. So it gives people the security that you want, that they want to pay for. If you want everyone in the world to validate your transaction, well then you can get that, but it's going to cost you. Now the projects that are, some projects that are doing interesting things around sharding are like Radix and Tari. We use the same consensus algorithm. It's actually called Cerberus, funny enough. It's a very clever approach to breaking up the blockchain. But doing it in a way that's very performant. And then Mira is also looking at sharding, although they've just they announced yesterday that they've abandoned their sharding strategy for ZK rollups. So I thought it was interesting. Another way to scale is just to use sidechains, right? Just like independent chains that run kind of alongside each other. And I mean, that's kind of the easiest way to scale, really, and that's why I think you can find there's so many more projects taking this approach. Sorry, we were taking this approach as well initially. The challenge here is that what happens when you want to do cross-chain stuff? We've got some talks around this. You want to do cross-chain stuff, but do it at speed, right? Because now you kind of have to synchronize all these things in order to avoid all sorts of attacks. If everyone isn't completely aware of what the states on that chain are. And this is kind of why it's like not my favorite strategy for scaling, going massive main scale. And then what I find is quite interesting is rollups. So we're summarizing state, and so you're compressing a huge amount of information onto what is really like prime real estate on the layer 1 blockchain. And I'm very much interested in the zero knowledge rollups because it ties in a bit more with the privacy angle, which is very, very important in my mind. And some guys that are doing some interesting things is Aztec and Alio. There are other projects as well. Alio is they're building it on Ethereum, and Aztec is their own one. But now moving to privacy, and I was asking earlier about why aren't there trillions of dollars in DeFi loans and this kind of thing? And I think my guess would be that it's because of the lack of privacy. Like even Ethereum blockchain is an open book. Most blockchains are an open book. You can see what's happening. And if you're a company that's dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars, you don't want people to kind of see what you're doing. There's IP involved there, and of course, filtering and maximum extractable value are actually real problems. Like dealing with this now, if you want to run a DeFi, like a DeFi project, you've got to spend a huge amount of time and effort and energy, like figuring out what these are and how to deal with them. That's a tax. If I'm in finance and I want to offer service to people, I don't want to learn about this. I just want to offer my boring, borrowers pay 5% interest and lenders get 3%, and that difference is the profit. That good old-fashioned boring stuff. I don't want to learn about this. And so now there's a whole industry and projects that are helping solve these problems. But honestly, if we just have privacy, these things go away. It's like they don't become an issue. So I'm convinced that in the future the chain is going to sit really like eat everyone's lunch is going to have privacy built in. Another aspect about privacy, and this is kind of something that someone just brought to my attention recently, is how do you how do you get ETH in your hands today if you've never, if you've never been in the Ethereum ecosystem, how do you get ETH into your hands without going through a centralized gatekeeper today? I mean, you can't really, like, outside of maybe doing like a local Bitcoin type thing, but I mean, that's risky, right? You get like some stranger, you meet in a cafe, you put your briefcase of money down, and hopefully you get to Ethereum. And hopefully they don't, it's super risky. Like, mining is really the way that we used to get into this without going through centralized gatekeepers. So, this is something I think we've forgotten about. Like, proof of work is actually still pretty important. Okay, so what are the privacy solutions that I'm looking at? So number one is what's called fully homomorphic encryption, and I think this is kind of the holy grail of privacy. What this means is that validator nodes can run your programs, but the program is encrypted, the input is encrypted, and the output is encrypted, but they know that they've done it correctly. They know that the answer is correct, but they don't know what they've got like a blindfold on and they're doing the calculations, but they know that the answer is correct, and then multiple nodes can reach consensus. So that, I mean, that's a game changer. We know it's possible in theory. In practice, it's just god awfully slow. So, I give an example. Just doing a sharp 256 hash, it takes a couple of nanoseconds on a CPU. It takes a couple of hours running it in a FHE circuit. But there's some really cool projects working on this. The research is very active. Zama is probably the leading project in this space. And then Phoenix is building a FHE EVM. I mean, it's so slow, I don't know how practical it is, but they're using Zama's technology. So if you're interested, go check those guys out. Taking one step back, if we decide, all right, this is not practical right now, let's go one step back and let's at least make the values encrypted on the blockchain. So you can kind of see who's sending what to whom, but the values are completely hidden. That you can do, and that's working today, and it's fast enough to be ready for prime time. And this is what you see in Monero and number one with Tari and sorts of things. Obviously, the downside is that it's not perfect privacy because not everything is private. You can still see, this address did something with some value. I don't know what the value is, but you can kind of recreate the transaction graph, particularly in Tari. Monero does a much better job of hiding participants of transactions. And then one thing, the final one, which is a bit of a buzzword, but it is really exciting, is the zero-knowledge circuits. And this includes rollups. But this is a generalized thing that says, like, give me any program, any calculation, and I can create a zero-knowledge version of it that gives you a proof. And then you can hand the proof along to nodes to prove that you've done this calculation correctly, and they don't know any of the details of the inputs. And this can probably do most of the job of privacy. So the nodes are looking, what you're doing with CK rollups and CK circuits is that you're moving the calculation off the main chain, which is actually good for scalability as well. So, I mean, there could be a nice dovetail in there. The downside of this is that the maths is really new. It's incredibly difficult. You have to be, there's kind of a handful of cryptographers. Like, you need world-class cryptographers to really handle this stuff. Because it's new and because it's complicated, it's probably broken. There's probably vulnerabilities in there that we don't know about yet. And the most popular zero-knowledge setups, smarts, require trusted setups. And if you don't do that properly, your whole thing, you basically put a backdoor into the whole system. So, but there's a lot of great research going on in this space. Lurk is a very cool project and SOCOM, where you can basically give it a program that will generate a zero-knowledge circuit for you. And I mentioned some projects that are implementing this. I think they're both at testnet stage. Alright, so wrapping up. TLDR, firstly, I mean, being away and then coming back after a while, I was just kind of really blown away by how much innovation and incredible work has been done in the Ethereum space, especially DevX and DeFi. I think it's obvious that Ethereum has flipped Bitcoin in some key metrics and use cases. You look at transaction fees, you look at just the amounts of, there's definitely interest in decentralized finance, that's clear, but I think scalability and privacy must be addressed. Otherwise, we're not going to take over the world and we're not going to achieve our mission. And to me, I think ZK rollups and sharding are the most interesting. I mean, there are definitely people that are aware of this, and there are plenty of projects that are tackling these exact things tackling it in the Ethereum space. I think fully homomorphic encryption is still like probably 10 years away from prime time. And you probably have to go to hardware to actually make this practical, which some are actually, they're building custom chips to these calculations. And lastly, I have to show Tari a little bit, but the reason I'm here and the reason why I look at all these things is that I really don't care which project wins. I want to achieve that mission of separating money and state, but as I have a huge amount of influence on one particular project, I'm really looking around and trying to grab all the best ideas and all the best practices and bring them together into Tari. So Tari is looking, if you go and have a look at our approach, we are doing sharding and we are privacy focused and we are very concerned about DevX and performance. So check us out. Muito obrigado.
Someone got any questions? Thank you very much for the talk. Yeah, I agree with most of the positive points related to the Ethereum ecosystem. My question is more, if I understand it well with Tari, you also want to tackle the blockchain trilemma, right? My concern is on how are we going to guarantee the decentralized aspect, because I guess it's maybe the one as well that sometimes requires some times and network effects basically to be built. So yeah.
So you're asking how we handle decentralization or how we tackle the
exactly, yes, definitely. Because I understand in terms of scalability and performance, you can implement basically some new technology natively, but I guess at the very beginning, Bitcoin was not decentralized, and the same thing for Ethereum at the very beginning. It was, it takes time.
Well, I mean, so I think you can't beat the trilemma. So we cheat, right? We actually have a layer one that is proof of work, slow, but built to be decentralized. Anyone can run a node, anyone can mine. We merge one with RandomX, which is Monera's proof of work, and that's CPU friendly. And then we have a portion is hybrid mining, a portion is ASIC friendly, and we try to choose an algorithm that will become commoditized. Like you'll just have these ASICs like you buy in flash disks today. Like ultimately, that's the forward-thinking nature of that decision, and that tackles the decentralization. And then we have an L2 that is scalable and fast. It's a BFT consensus algorithm, and it's got sharding, and it's highly scalable. But if there's any liveness issues, it falls back to the layer one, which is acts like a global clock and a global registry for certain aspects. And so we kind of beat the trilemma like that. We don't really, but we just kind of decouple it and let each chain do what it does best. That's kind of our approach.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Sorry. No? Thank you, Kyle.